Okay, on the show, we've got two experts in household budgeting that break down what the budget means for you and your household, Hannah McQueen and Francis Cook. Forget the noise, forget the nonsense and the nink and poops. I've got the two best budgeters break down the budget, so you don't have to, okay? Let's go.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, welcome to the program, folks. Nice to have you along. You're with Editor-in-Chief. I'm Duncan Garner. Welcome. And please subscribe. Keep the subscriptions going. Just tick on that. Jump on that one. It's all there. Tell your friends. Share it. It helps us stay around. You will save more. Your employer will give you more. The government will cut back what it gives you in its Kiwisaver subsidy. Honestly, National have just cut all these Kiwisaver entitlements. Over time, they've just cut them back. I'm over it. We need to ring-fence Kiwisaver and just develop trust in it again. Also in this budget, welfare is cut for 18 and 19-year-olds. That's a good thing. Why do we give people welfare straight out of school? It seems ridiculous. And wealthy people won't get payments to have babies. Now that seems fair too. Why would you give them taxpayers' money? Here you go, have a baby, have some taxpayers' money. So what should we look out for in this budget? I've got the two best experts coming up. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Okay, but before we get there, can we now just please leave Kiwisaver alone? Just, the scheme I joined years ago is barely recognisable to the one now. I got, well, you all did if you joined it early. We got the $1,000 kickstart, as did my kids. We got a $1,000 a year subsidy or bonus from the government every year, and our employer matched our contributions up to 2%, not taxed. Okay, just not taxed. Now the kickstart has gone. National took that away. National halved the annual government contribution. Then yesterday, halved it again. So you watch them halve that. There's another. Hey, next budget, probably halve it again. For sole traders and contractors like me, there's almost no point belonging to Kiwisaver because all these little bonuses and all the benefits of it, all the little trinkets have been taken away. I still think it's a great scheme for PAYE workers because it focuses on your employer and it makes them pay 4% of your salary into the scheme. So they wouldn't do that voluntarily. You need the scheme to make sure they do it. But there have been so many changes since it was first introduced. It's there for politicians to mess with and it's their little plaything. Can we please limit what can be done to it from here on in? National especially has used it to take things off us and then add a tax to it. Miserable bastards. Kiwisaver needs to have one last change and then leave it alone. Make it compulsory, lock it down. So much uncertainty hovers over it because the politicians keep playing with it. They just can't keep their hands off it. We get the money when we retire at age 65. But what happens if the age, say, moves to 70? What we signed up for years ago then changes to 70. Is that fair? Because we're thinking it's going to be 65. Kiwisaver is a great thing, but politicians have attacked it and they use it for their own benefits and they've done this for too long. Kiwis need certainty and we deserve certainty, so hands off our money, stop rating it and stop making it less attractive. If you left it alone 40 years ago when we had the first scheme, rather than dumping it, we would be worth about $4 trillion right now. We'd be all wealthy, we'd have all the infrastructure we needed, so shame on you for that. That was the national government in the 70s. And let that be a lesson, okay? But I'm not sure any lessons have been learned. So many Kiwis involved in Kiwisaver, they want it left alone. There's so many of us now in Kiwisaver. Can you please just stop messing with it? Because it's a trust issue for us. When it comes to saving, our record's disgraceful. And you've shown a degree of total negligence as politicians in managing this thing. We're going to be much poorer in retirement because of the decisions that you've made in the last 30 or 40 years as the regulators, as the lawmakers. You've let us down. We will not be wealthy in retirement compared to Australia, and a good chunk of the blame for that must lie with past and present day politicians who set the rules, who pass the laws, and who create and manage these big schemes. It's a stain on all your houses, and it's shameful how you've approached this and continue to deal with it. New Zealanders deserved better, and we never got it, and still we're not going to save enough, despite the government's largely underwhelming moves and changes announced yesterday in the budget. We're still going to be way, way behind the Aussies. But at least it's something, I suppose. We need the discussion. We need a much wider and braver discussion about retirement age, about working in retirement, about age 65, age 70. What's it going to be? Who's going to lead this? Is Luxon the leader in this? Or can you not have the discussion while Winston Peters is there? We can't be honest. Is that what we're saying? Someone please lead this discussion, because it's about all our futures, and politicians ignoring it are completely negligent towards the population. I think it's shameful. Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner. Okay, nice to have you along. Hannah McQueen, founder of Enable Me, and Francis Cook, host of the Making Sense podcast. They join me now to talk about the budget, what they saw in it, what the signals are, what it means. Nice to have them both. First time on the podcast too. G'day, guys. Nice to see you.
Thanks for having us.
I'll kick it off with obviously we're talking about the budget. Hannah, I'll start with you. The Kiwisaver changes. So everyone's going on about the Kiwisaver changes. There must not be much happening around the place because it's still pretty incremental and pretty small in the scheme of people's lives and life changes and values and everything. What do you make of the change to 4%? I mean, let's get on with it.
Yeah, I guess two components, right? The government reducing their contribution, so halving that. I don't make too much of a deal about that because they've also stipulated that employers need to pay more, which actually outweighs what they've cancelled the other side. So I think that the employee is really no worse off from this. I really like that there's a step change to increase or lift the saving contribution. I like that you can get access or start contributing to it earlier, so not just from 18.
Yep.
I think those are good things. And I just think that people, perhaps to get some context around it, if they actually reviewed their Kiwisaver performance each year or had someone benchmark it and compare it with other funds, they could get more of a return in an optimal investment setting than on the government's contribution, which is very much that Kiwi strategy of let's just set and forget.
Yeah.
Let's just assume it will continue forever when it's just nothing ever is going to continue forever.
Yeah, so don't just sit in a default setting. Look around, shop around, and the difference could be hundreds of thousands of dollars in retirement. That's the truth. If you sit in a crappy scheme or you sit in a really good one, the difference over 40 years is massive.
It's big, and I think also as your situation changes, or the performance of some of these funds change, or market conditions change, that triggers a reassessment of, again, am I in the right fund for me? Because people could optimize their current fund today, but whether that's the right fund for them to be in next year or in 5 years is another thing again. So again, some proactive reviews of this would go a long way to dispelling some of the noise around the government drops in contributions.
Francis, you've written also that can we just leave Kiwisaver alone now? Let's trust this thing. I'm in your camp because when we first went into Kiwisaver, there was, and look, it was at the time may have been affordable, but nothing ever is long term. So $1,000 kickstart, brilliant. $1,000 contribution from the government, brilliant, and 2%. Contributions matched by 2% from your employer, and it wasn't taxed. Since then, National's taken away. They've gone from $1,000 kickstart to nothing. They've taken the $1,000 now down to $250. There's almost nothing left if you're a contractor like me. If you're not employed by anyone, if you're a contractor, the last little bonus is now just the $250 a year, which, as Hannah points out, there's other ways of getting that. Do you trust Kiwisaver? Because we need it to be there. We need to rely on it and to be able to find it trustworthy,
Yeah, and I think this is a really big problem. I mean, yes, I personally do trust Kiwisaver. Yes, I still like Kiwisaver overall as a scheme. But I do think what we're seeing here is we are constantly seeing this stripping away of the perks. And I think every time governments have changed Kiwisaver, it's been to pull out some of these perks, which does make people distrustful. People already struggle with this idea of locking away their money for 4 decades. That's a long time to say, yeah, don't worry, give us your money, we'll look after it, and then you'll have a good retirement. That's already asking a lot of trust from people. And then when there's constant pullback, I really wish that sometimes they would build up the scheme instead of pulling it back a bit. You look over the ditch and there's those amazing tax perks that Australians get for putting their money into super. There is, much higher contribution rates. They've seen that people need a carrot in order to take their financial future seriously. And so they've gone ahead and done that because it's cheaper overall. Yeah. And then we have over here this pulling back, the slow sort of cutting at it. And I talk a lot about money on social media, putting out information for people, and my comment section is full of people saying, Kiwisaver isn't worth it anymore, don't like it, I was never putting money into Kiwisaver anyway because you can't trust the government, they'll just take all your money. And this feeds that idea that's already there. And that's a real worry because we do need people to save into Kiwisaver.
Yeah, and I do. I think it's better than not having something because at least you've got a gun to your employer's head and they have to give, they will have to give 4%. But I'm a little bit miffed by National's lack of ambition around this because if you look at Australia and they've got $4 trillion on in their savings accounts now because of their scheme, and we gave ours away, in the 70s, so we know the history there. But we're going to take 3 years to get to 4%. So by the time we get there, we're still behind a long way. In fact, we still fall further behind, inflation and everything else. We don't even have inflation-adjusted contributions. So 4%, they needed to graduate it to 6 to 8 to 10 and have a 10-year plan in this budget. But no one's forcing them to do it now. It's 10 years. So you do 4% next year, 6% 2 years after that, and you tell employers, this is what it's going to be like. If we want a proper future, then you've got to outline it early.
Yes, but I think it's also got to be accompanied with a much bigger adult conversation around what retirement looks like. And we've got a whole lot of things that actually need to be changed. So, yes, Kiwisaver contributions need to lift, employer contributions need to lift. We need to talk about the pension age. We need to talk about means testing the pension. We need to talk about the fact that we do not have enough infrastructure, that our government can't even afford to pay for the care for our elderly. And we've got the super trend of people getting a whole lot older, a whole lot faster.
Yeah.
and mortgage settings seem to, or banks, I don't know if this is actually true, but it seems to be that when you hit 60, you're kind of dead to the bank, so they don't want to give you any money. So even if you did want to be ambitious in time for your retirement, no one's going to help you.
Yeah.
Like, there is a big conversation, and I do think that lifting our Kiwisaver contributions and the employer contributions is a huge part of that. But we need to have an adult conversation around the fact that there isn't enough money to last. The war chest has been emptied for goodness knows what, and we've got to do something about it. But I think that if we came to it with like a holistic solution, I think that more people want to solve this than
they
not.
do. No, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. And I think this is going to sound really brutal, but I don't think you can have this conversation while Winston Peters is in Parliament because he will not agree to the rising of the age. He's built his whole political career around this whole thing, right? So until Peters it leaves the New Zealand Parliament as a conversation that National and Labour can't have because National's tried to push it up and then it comes back again. Labour knows it has to go because they are economic realists most of the time, so they know it has to go, but they won't have that discussion. So I know Labour's not as realist as they used to be, I know. So, but what I'm saying is that he's blocking that conversation. It's true. You can't get it past Peters. But we need it. We need it. We need it. We need leadership on this.
It is the stunning lack of ambition as well. When we look at, we're gradually moving up to a 4% contribution. Wow. And then it's 12%. Well, 6 each in Australia. And it's so far away from what we know is needed. And that lack of ambition is evident in so many parts of the money conversation. Just as Hannah says, the fact that we can't really talk about the age, we can't really talk about means testing super. As soon as that starts, they just get this light up of people who are furious and say, well, I worked really hard and I've earned it.
Yeah.
And it's not a sensible conversation. You can't just light up like that and say, well, I'm due mine. Yeah. That's not how things work. If it can't be paid for, what's going to happen?
I say, and so this now comes down to a question about means testing, which we saw in the budget just starting to emerge. Means testing is something that the Treasury is very keen on. National has been burned by means testing with super before in the early 90s when they said they wouldn't do it, then the Bolger did, or it turned to nightmare. So they've spent 30 years trying to get trust back. But it's slowly coming back in again during the conversation, and you're now seeing it in welfare. So 18 and 19-year-olds, they're going to stop them having such easy access to welfare. What do we think of that, Hannah? Is that a good thing?
I think it's a great thing. Like once you finish school, you do have to work or you have to study. That needs to be the expectation. I don't even know how it became an option for people to stay at home.
I know, soft.
But it's so weird and it's so dangerous just from a mindset perspective. Like, I really feel we need to harden up. And if you compare ourselves to our Australian counterparts, like they are ruthless on some of these things. Like, they're not tolerant to the excuse after excuse why people shouldn't work. So I really like that. My concern, though, is just for those solo parents to make sure that obviously their contributions from their ex-partner would normally stop at 18. And if they are going to be left carrying some of that cost that isn't offset by benefits. I'd like to see the policy behind that to make sure that, that the vulnerable families aren't exposed. I guess Nicola Willis has said that although she can't produce that detail, the intention is to make sure that it's means tested or it's not creating a kind of heightened vulnerability for people. So that's just, I guess, the practical side of things. But it comes right back to the messages that we're sending our kids. That's what I did like about the Kiwisaver contribution starting early. So even if you're younger and you're working, employers need to contribute to your Kiwisaver. It's like, of course they should.
It's about the culture you create in your country. So
Absolutely.
The Aussies know it's not acceptable, but, we used to have this joke that we could surf for the government. So I had mates that left school and surfed for the government, which meant that they took the dole and went around the country on a shitty old car and surfed all the beaches that they wanted to. So we put all this investment in, right? So right from birth, the government's putting money into kids, through primary school, early childhood, and then through college. It costs money, right, for each kid to be a bum on seat. And at the end of that 15-year investment, hundreds of thousands of dollars, we let them walk out and pick up a welfare check. It's bullshit. Let's call it. There's got to be a pathway. I wouldn't let any kid leave school without a pathway. Sign a deal. So I quite like that from this government too. You can't go bashing people. We did that in the 90s and look what happened. So you've got to, MMP is classic for incrementalism. So we incrementally bring in these changes. But I reckon National's starting the conversation, Francis. They're starting the conversation in this area.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think the trick with means testing is, again, you've got to make sure you have that trust level from people. I don't think there'll be much sympathy for a lot of the high earners. Like, I see the Kiwisaver changes. I'm not a big fan of a lot of them, but things like cutting it off for people earning over 180K, I mean, they're not going to really notice a couple of $100. They'll be fine. So I'm not going to go there because I don't think they'll get much sympathy, and I'm kind of fair enough. Yeah. But the trick is making sure when you do bring in this means testing that you show people that you can be trusted with this and that you're going to get the levels right. Because when you have these cutoff points, we've seen this with things like the first home grants when they still existed, or, even the other Kiwisaver contributions, that they can put them at a certain dollar level and then not move them. And of course, inflation continues every single year. You've got to be, if you're going to means test, if you're going to have that as a standard, which again, fair enough, really good arguments for bringing it in, you've got to monitor it. You've got to make sure it's still working. You can't just set and forget and use it as a way to gradually, by stealth, bring down entitlements by just saying, oh, well, that's the way we set it at 5 years ago and it'll be fine still, I'm sure. You've got to really show that if you're going to do that, you're going to do it properly and earn that trust.
It's interesting, a couple of points out of that. The fact that, if you pay an insurance premium, you will find that every year it just ticks up because of inflation, the inflation index, right? But our savings, they didn't do that. So our savings just get smaller and smaller. Just on back to employment, back to young people and working and everything. About 15 years ago, I was at a Pacific Island forum thing, and Helen Clark announced the Pacific Island workers, the RSE scheme, coming to New Zealand. The first tranche was 5,000 people from the Pacific would come and pick fruit in New Zealand because we were slowly finding it hard to pick fruit. I looked at it the other day, and this year we're bringing in 27,500 RSE workers to work in New Zealand orchards and things because we don't do it. Yet 220,000 people are on the job seeker benefit. It's pretty amazing, 27,500 imported workers at a time when immigration's high anyway and the people are unemployed. We're bringing in almost 30,000 people from the islands to pick the avocados that somehow we can't pick fruit anymore. I don't know what happened to us. I don't know. We're not born without hands or something anymore. I don't know. But it seems amazing, doesn't it, that we have this workforce. Or do we have a workforce? I mean, do we have to accept that these people can't work?
Well, have you ever picked fruit?
Yeah, and it was. I mean, I did a week actually. I had to guts it out. I was much younger, and it's pretty.
It is grueling.
Oh, are we that soft? Oh, so we officially. You were right. We're soft.
We're soft. It is such a great way to work out if you like it. I remember when I used to do it before, when I was at university and before I went to university. So you'd go home to the bay and pick or thin, or it was just horrific.
Yes.
And I used to have this romantic notion that it'd be so great to work outside and get the sun every day.
Get real.
Honestly, like the first week, I'm like, get me a desk job for the rest of my life. I just cannot do this. This is hard. Now, I stuck it out for the whole holidays and did repeating holidays, but...
So you did it, though, but you did it and you've learned something from it, big time.
Yeah, I think you've got to make it worth people's while, right? Like, I imagine there's a cost to bring these workers over. Can't we just channel that money into getting people who are on the job seeker actually working? Because it does create, purpose and structure and reward and a pathway from there. But again, the culture's got to change.
Yeah,
if the culture is you don't really need to do much and you're still going to get a benefit, well, why would you do much?
So we've accepted that. You go to Hastings and the Hastings office of Wins and the Napier office, and there's all the young kids hanging around or whatever, and no one's tapping them on the shoulder and saying, hey, just up there. They're paying actually really good money now for fruit pickers. The avocado industry, I had them on recently, and they couldn't get workers, but they were offering $50 an hour.
What?
So
that is amazing money. I look back at again one of my first jobs, tomato picking, when I was 14, and I certainly wasn't getting paid 50.
I know. I picked strawberries, and it was like $4.50 an hour.
And it's so hard, and it's so hot.
Well, I powder coated curtain rails for $6 an hour, and they still tax me. Yeah, but what I'm saying is that so the money is, everyone says, the money's
incredible.
crap, but there's a minimum wage in New Zealand now, right? And then there's the need that we can't get these workers, so they're having to pay. It's about humans work on incentives. They work on and so. If you want to earn $50 an hour, that's there's a job there. But we now bring in a stadium full of people. So like Westpac, what's the Wellington Stadium? That's about 30,000 there. That's how many people we bring in. It's quite a workforce, isn't it, when you look at it like that? I know.
It's amazing. Yeah, that's a great visual.
Yeah. And then there's 220,000 Kiwis on job seeker. I know a couple of guys that are. And they've said to me, they're not job seeking because they get away with it. They don't have to. They're kind of unofficial caregivers for family members who are old, and they're a different culture than me. It's just a different way of working it. But they're not job seeking. No one from the government's knocking on their door saying do that. But in Australia, they do. So I reckon we might see more of this. I reckon there might be some more of this. We're not going to pay rich people to have babies. God, that makes sense, doesn't it, Francis?
Well, again, right? The means testing for people who are earning quite a bit. I think the trick is in terms of the having babies thing, and again, it's the devil in the detail. So if you're a high earner and you're having a family and you don't notice this stuff, great, cool. I think it makes sense not to be giving them that support when they maybe don't need it, won't notice it. I think the trick is what if one parent is working and they're potentially earning quite a bit? They might be earning in the high six figures, but is the other parent working? And we see this a lot with women having lower Kiwisaver balances, lower investments and savings in general, because they take that time out of the workforce, sometimes just for the maternity leave, sometimes for several years because they're looking after the kids. And I think we need to decide, is that something that we want to encourage for parents to be involved with their own children's upbringing and be able to take that time? And if so, do we need to be a bit smarter about, if we're means testing, should it be household income rather than individual income, and making sure those things are locked in so that it is more fair? And I would love to see some things that help women have more financial security, even after taking time for having kids, because there is a huge financial penalty, and it sees women, it knocks on the magic of compounding that is what makes you money all the time. It also means that those impacts from taking time out of the workforce to have kids knocks on a huge amount. And we do have far more women in poverty in old age than men. And one of the reasons is having kids. So again, maybe if we're looking at it, really take that into account. And with things like the pay equity changes, I don't necessarily know that women's issues are top of mind for this government.
So, I think the Greens are investigating whether men can have babies, but that's another story for another day. But the thing about the pay equity stuff, they have taken out. Well, they've still put money aside for future claims because they've had to put the financial risk there. But it's the way National handled that. that was suspicious, and so, I've got daughters, and I have to look at these things. I look at these things really closely and go, hang on, what are you doing here, mate? And they brought in urgency and they rushed it through, and Seymour said he saved the budget. And whenever I hear that, I think, okay, you've shafted someone. Who is it? So on process, shocking. Was it necessary to realign some of those claims? Maybe. But the way they handled it has left a lot of women not trusting this government, Hannah, which I think for Luxon, who was already low in those stakes, that's concerning for him, surely.
Yeah, I think it is. I think so much of it is about being able to communicate your points well.
Yeah.
And the narrative just got away from them. But it's not the first time that it does. Or when they have something that's amazing to celebrate, they don't get the points out that we should be celebrating. I'm just like, come on, this is like basic stuff.
I know.
And they want to be careful because, they've got a year and a bit or whatever to prove that they can turn this economy around. We've all felt the pinch, the contraction of this cost cutting to create all these billions of dollars they can spend or kind of put in a different category. Yeah, it's like, okay, well, we want to feel some good times now.
Well, where are they? I mean, hang on a second. No, honestly, because I'm like you guys. I reckon this year, I don't know, because I'm in business now. I just run this as a business. I think this year is actually tougher and potentially harder than last year because it's another year on. It's still like this. Where's our positivity? Where's our confidence? Where's our growth? The PM put this on the agenda at the start of the year. Growth year. Hey, pal, where is it?
Yeah, and I think there could be some quick wins on that, right? Like, even just with their business boost, where you buy an asset and you get 20% off. It's like fantastic. But most small businesses are so poor because they've had to survive the next few years. Where are they going to get the money from to buy the asset? And so that's when you've got to say, that's what I'd like them to say, hey, we are trying to work on monetary policy to make it easier for you to borrow because we know that when you're self-employed, you can't borrow jack.
I know.
It's the problem. And so I think just there are some easy, they could signal that they're in touch with the reality of the middleman.
But they haven't. This government and the Reserve Bank itself, they look more out of touch with not only the middleman, whatever we call it, but it's even the small business people. Like small business people have got, as you guys say, they haven't got the ability to do what the big companies do and have a big balance sheet. They're sole contractors. They haven't got the capital. Capital's everything.
That's right.
And we haven't got it.
And they keep going on about there was the survive to 25 mantra and everyone was hanging out for that. And then it's arrived and it really hasn't been the savior people were hoping for. No. And I think one of the big things we talk about, we're a low wage economy. We need more innovation. We need people to be willing to take risks and start businesses. And we have too much tied up in property and housing. And we should be boosting the share market and the business scene. And one of the things that comes up constantly when I'm talking to people, whether it's in the business world or whether it's in the financial world, is they say that there are rules on the banks that make them very cautious about business lending, far more cautious about business lending than buying houses, where you can get leverage to the hilt. And of course you can run into problems, but it's the risks are not treated equally. And so we have this highly unproductive investing into property and this really souped up property market where a lot of frustrated first home buyers feel locked out. And then we could have these amazing businesses. We're already an economy of small to medium businesses. It could be so much bigger on that front, though. And we're not giving them the support to try things, to innovate. It does take money. You often don't have it at the beginning. Why don't we have more support for that? And instead, we've got things like Callaghan Innovation getting shut down. What's happening there?
Well, when I was setting up my business, for the first time I went from a PAYE worker of 30 years to setting up a business, and I was looking around and business mentors and looking around at how you do it and everything, and I was like, oh, okay, you're kind of on your own. So, and and also you're proud. So you've reported on all this shit for years, so you think you know what you're doing. So and there's lots of holes to fall into and mistakes to be made, which I quite enjoy because it's avoiding them is good and learning from them is good. But it's really hard being an entrepreneur in a small country like this because markets are small here, but they're a long way away of the big ones. But the ones that nail it do it really well. But we don't celebrate business success. We don't have the conversations about it. We're suspicious of business. And I'd love to turn that around and say, let's celebrate these guys because they are the wealth creators and they create the jobs. But we seem to sort of go, oh, yeah, you rich bastards, what are they up to? We don't trust them.
I also think, like so many people, I have this conversation a lot with people as well, particularly on social media, where people say, I'm not paid enough, I can't get a pay rise, my boss keeps turning me down, and, they charge me out at this much, but I'm making less than half of that. And I think, well, the answer to that is, could you go out solo? The answer to that is, could you become independent? Could you do this as a contractor, as a sole trader, as a small business, whatever? Because it's already a proven business model. You know it's working. If your boss is charging you out for twice as much as you earn, you know that the opportunity is there. Yeah. But what holds people back? The risk. It's scary. It's hard. And so there should be more to help people make that leap, to make it less scary. I think that would really boost incomes in New Zealand. But we're not making it easy for people to make that leap. They do need a bit of help. It's scary.
And it's like with families. So people they go, as you say, they go to work because PAYE and it's safe and there's not too much risk involved there. And so there's a working for families scheme, which Michael Cullen always said to me, we've brought this bloody thing in because bosses are miserable and they don't pay people enough. So we brought in this, this bit where we don't. This is the bit between Australia and New Zealand, right? These Aussie bosses, they got all this money, so they pay their people better than us. We don't, so we brought in working for families. It's transfer. People get their tax back. Do you know how many people are on working for families now as a percentage? Do you know of New Zealand families?
No. Not a clue.
I came across it the other day. I'm a loser that just reads everything. I was, try and find it. 54% of New Zealand families are on working for families.
That's huge.
What?
54% of New Zealand families claim working for families. So if you think about that, that's basically 54% of families that don't pay tax because they pay it and they get it back, right? It's a transfer back, isn't it? That's effectively what it is. I thought it might be 20%, but now it makes sense because we have a low wage economy, so they're stuck in. They've got kids and they've got low wages. 54%.
That's way higher than I would have ever guessed. Who's not on
welfare? Who's not on welfare in New Zealand? We've become this massive welfare state, which is the ticking bomb that's really gone off. Are we hopeful? And final question: Are we? Given what you've seen yesterday and the messages and everything, Hannah, are you hopeful for New Zealand?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of optimism for this country. I just think people talk about green shoots and all this stuff, and I kind of roll my eyes. I feel. You remember when you were young and you'd go into a fish and chip store and there was this machine that you'd put a coin in and it would fall down to like a tray of coins and then that tray would go out and you're trying to kind of flip the tray down and then eventually you get a coin out the bottom if you're lucky. And it was so exciting. I feel we just need a few coins to come to the bottom and then we're off. I think there are so many amazing businesses that are just a bit nervous. I think that the business confidence, they talk about business confidence. I just think consumer confidence, right? We want to feel
human confidence. It's us.
Yeah. Let's not worry about the tariffs. Let's not worry about America. Let's just control the things that we can control. This is a steady as she goes budget. That is good timing because there's so much uncertainty. You don't want our government burning money. We don't want it, but you've got to take control of your own household, right? And what's your plan? I think we've got interest rates coming down. They're going to be down for a bit. What are you going to do to take advantage of that?
Yeah, and how are you going to leverage off that? Because right now it doesn't feel like the economy is leveraging off. Like we've had low interest rates now for a while, and we don't. I don't feel like we're winning. So what's happening?
We
with
don't
the money?
have confidence. No. I think that's the thing. And then if this business booster, whatever it is, proves well, and does kind of kick off the excitement in the business industry and that kind of perpetuates
I think
another economic cycle. But that's going to create inflation, right? Eventually that will create inflation. So this is your window to get something done. And it's okay, you can do it. But if you've got kind of the wobbles, let's get a plan together. So
if you got the wobbles, you'll miss it. And then because the window may not be long, it might it'll be years, but it'll be a certain period of years. If you miss it by not wanting to go for the run down the blind side, this is a rugby term, if you're a bit stilted, it's gone. Now, I reckon businesses will pick up on this 20% thing because the opportunity's there.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't you? They will do it. You watch, because it's always remarkable when you see the figures a year later, just how many people have done it and with how much money. So I think that's good. Frances, are you optimistic?
I'm an optimist by nature, so the bias declared on that point, where I'm always blue sky thinking, and the various people I work with have to bring me back down to earth and remind me that things can go wrong and maybe we should plan for that. But look, I do think that there's a lot to still be excited for in New Zealand, partly just New Zealanders are good at figuring things out. I do think there's a certain number of New Zealanders who do a really good job of saying, here's the situation. I didn't make this decision. I might not necessarily like this decision, but I'm going to make the best of it. Here's how I'm going to work with it. And I think the key in these situations is taking the time to be like, what has happened? How do I make the best of it? There's a whole bunch of stuff you can't control in life, but what are the things that you can control? And I think what I'd like to see is making it easier for more people to take that mindset, making it so that more people understand the economy, the financial world, the business world, because let's be honest, money isn't the biggest thing in life, but it impacts everything that is. It will impact everything that will help you make your life better. So if we're going to focus on leveling people up, focusing on the money side of things is really important. So I think if we can do something to help people have the tools to understand what's going on, to be able to read what's happening around them and then move, that's what I would like to see a bit more of.
I reckon that we will bounce pretty quickly soon, and it'll be quite a big bounce, because what's going to happen is we get to the end of the winter. The interest rates coming down will really affect now the housing market. People will feel more confident now, going to buy some houses, sell houses, and you watch that little domino, because our economy is a housing economy with a few businesses tacked on. So when the housing economy is dead, everything else dies. But when it bounces back, everything bounces back in a big way. That's sort of my simplistic look at it, and it's attached to the periods of the summer. So about October it'll start to warm up, and then you got 6 months of that cycle. So that's when I reckon we'll see bounce in a few months' time. But it's going to be still a tough little winter to get through that. But I'm positive. We're saving more. We're going to save more. People, and New Zealanders, as you say, they can do and they want to get things done. They don't want to be miserable. We've had 3 or 4 years of it. I've had enough. Draw a line under it. So I'm positive. Thank you for your time, guys. Brilliant. Really nice to see you. And we should do this more often. We solve the world's problems, maybe.
I think we've solved a few.
Yeah, created a few more. But yeah,
exactly, created more. But yes.
No, thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers, guys.
See you later.
All right, awesome.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Right, that's good, isn't it? They're good, aren't they? Must get them back. Let me know what you think anyway. Duncan at rover.nz. I'm not going to speak to Isaac today because he's, I think there's maybe some wolves at the door, maybe dinosaurs. There's might be construction, but there's something going on. And so it means it's technically it's going to be a little bit difficult. But he's still in the hot seat and running this thing smoothly. Letters to the editor, I'll do. G'day, Duncan. As a small business employer, I'm disappointed that the budget didn't make Kiwisaver compulsory for everyone. See, here we go. The emails coming in. Usually my lowest paid employees will opt out so they get a few more bucks a week in their pocket. This is short-term thinking. And they then lose out on not only getting the employer contribution, but not getting the government contribution as well. I try to educate them, but they just don't listen. It would cost my business more if they opted in, but that would be fine. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Kiwisaver was designed for those who cannot save for themselves, yet they're all opting out. Can we see some stats, please, on how much of the workforce is opting out from Kiwisaver? It should be compulsory for everyone. Cheers, Guy. P.S. Love your work. I agree with you. Yeah, I've actually said so too. Make it compulsory. You have to opt out, so it is actually compulsory until you have the ability to opt out. Why do we give people a chance to opt out? Just make it compulsory. Stroke of the pen. They could have done it yesterday. I still think National's not ambitious on savings. I don't think they're ambitious enough, Guy. G'day, Duncan. I've just come across your Slam Dung site. We better clear this up. Slam Dunk. Slam Dung is is cowpat. Okay, so I've just come across your Slam Dung site and really enjoy your sensible comments. However, I have one problem, and that is the speed with which you talk. I put the captions on, and that is a help, but it would be so much better if you could speak a little slower. I'm sure I won't be the only person who would appreciate this. Many thanks, Helen Mosley. I took your advice halfway through. I realised what you're telling me. So I can promise that I'll try and slow down, but I cannot guarantee that I'll remember to always, because I'm one of those guys. But it's good advice because you're not the only one that's ever said that across the last 30 years. Thank you for the emails.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
right, that is us. Thank you all for your feedback and support. See, now I'm trying to go. Oh, stop laughing at me. Get in touch with our social media, Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, or flick me an email, duncan@rover.nz. To my team, Isaac, thank you, brother. I think the silence between us, though, says a lot, and that's fine. To my team, thank you, guys. When I say guys, thank you, brother. And remember, life is no dress rehearsal. There's no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth. So get out and enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day and the days ahead. We'll catch you later. Take care. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.